All right, welcome everybody. Let's do this. So from yesterday, we had this theorem that we wrote down. It was the factor theorem, and it said, let P be a polynomial, let A be a real number. If P of A is equal to 0, then X minus A is a factor of P. Okay, so this was a lot to take in from yesterday. So let's just really quickly, in 2 minutes, let's just review what this really means. So what does this mean? Example. Let's say if we have this question. Is x plus 3 a factor of f of x is equal to x squared plus 7x plus 12? How did we know if x plus 3 was a factor of this? What did we used to do before? What would we do? We would have divided the polynomial, right? Like, if we divided x plus 3 into this, if the remainder was 0, then what would we say? We would say x plus 3 is a factor of this. If we did not get a remainder of 0, then we would say x plus 3 is not a factor of that. But with this theorem over here, we don't need to do this anymore, okay? Instead of dividing this polynomial like this to see if we get a remainder 0, all we need to do is plug in the opposite of that positive 3. So here, if I have x plus 3, all we need to do is plug in f of negative 3 to see what the remainder will be when we divide x plus 3 into this. So if we do f of negative 3 and you get 0, then x plus 3 is a factor of f of x. If you plug in negative 3 into this and you don't get 0, if it's not equal to 0, then x plus 3 is not a factor of f of x. So just to check it out, is x plus 3 a factor of x squared plus 7x plus 12? We don't need to divide the polynomial to see if we get the remainder of 0. Plugging in negative 3 over here tells us what the remainder will be. And when you plug in negative 3 in here, I mean, you could take your time and do it, but I did it for you. If you plug in negative 3, you do get 0. So then x plus 3 must be a factor of x squared plus 7x plus 12, okay? That was the general idea from yesterday. So if you want, you could rewind, you could write this stuff down, but that's up to you. If you want to move on with the lesson, let's continue. So here, this is page number 2 from yesterday. We didn't get a chance to do this question, but this question is very, very, very tricky, okay? Oh, that's not the one I wanted. This question is very tricky. So here, let's read this question. It says, consider the polynomial p of x is equal to x cubed plus kx squared plus x plus 6. Find the value of k so that x plus 1 is a factor of p. This is a very tough question if you have no idea anything about what we're doing with dividing polynomials. And it's a good SAT question, but how do we figure it out? So one thing we have to understand is, because it's saying that x plus 1 is a factor of p, right? If x plus 1 is a factor of p, then all we need to do is plug in the opposite of that x plus 1, that positive 1, which is negative 1. And because x plus 1 is a factor of p, when you plug in negative 1, it has to equal 0 as that remainder. So then plug in negative 1 for x and solve for k. So the setup to solve this problem is you have to do p of negative 1. And here it's just going to be, let's just follow this over here. Let me make this nice and easy to see. So parentheses, and a parentheses here. And then you see this is x cubed, so it's negative 1 cubed plus k times negative 1 squared plus negative 1 plus 6. Okay, and that might be very small to see. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, that's a little better. Let me fix the angle. Okay, over here. And you see the idea is when you do this, this must, let's see, is it a little blurry? My bad. Okay, that's better. Here, notice that this has to equal 0 because you know that x plus 1 is a factor of the whole thing. So what I want you to do is solve for k. Take your time, pause the video, don't wait for me to do it, but try and do it without a calculator. What is negative 1 cubed? Like, how do you continue this by yourself? Pause the video, okay? And let's say you pause the video and you want to go through it. Negative 1 cubed is equal to negative 1. Why? Because negative 1 cubed is negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1, right? And then what's negative 1 times negative 1? Positive 1. What's positive 1 times negative 1? Negative 1. Okay, so this is negative 1. And then this becomes negative 1 squared, so that's just plus k, because you're doing 1 times k. Then this is positive times negative is negative 1 plus 6, so that equals 0. So now here you have minus 1, so you have negative 2 plus k plus 6 equals 0. And now you have combine negative 2 and 6, you get k plus 4 equals 0. So here k is equal to negative 4. Okie dokie. All right, so now that you know k is equal to negative 4, let's see what happens here. It says find the other two factors of p for the value of k found in part A. So now if you know that k is equal to negative 4, let's plug in negative 4 in here. So here we have x cubed plus, oh, not plus, it's going to be negative, right? So here it's going to be x cubed minus 4x squared plus x plus 6. Okay? And what it's asking you to do is find the other factors. So how do you factor this? Well, let's see. Take your time. We have to go back in time for a technique to be able to factor this, but pause the video and try and do it yourself. Notice that if you have 4 terms, right, then this is a factor by grouping. Okay, so let's try factor by grouping. Does factor by grouping work over here? All right, well, let's see. What's the greatest common factor of this? It's x squared, and this is x minus 4. And then what's the greatest common factor of this? This is plus 1. Oh, it doesn't work. You can't, this doesn't work. Very sad face. So how do you actually find out how to do it? Notice that you have to think about this over here. If you know x plus 1 is a factor of this whole entire thing, then what you're allowed to do is you're allowed to take this x cubed minus 4x squared plus x plus 6, and you're allowed to divide it by x plus 1 over here. So what you have to do is you have to divide this polynomial by x plus 1 to be able to factor the rest. Like I said, this problem was very, very tricky, but it's a very good question. Because how do you know you're allowed to do this? Because you know x plus 1 is a factor of p. So divide the polynomial and see what you get. I'm going to pause the video. This is, let me write this over here, x cubed minus 4x squared plus x plus 6, and that is by x plus 1. Okay, so let's divide this polynomial and see what happens. Here, now this is a cube. How many times does x go into x cubed? X squared. X squared times this is x cubed. X squared times this is positive x squared. Parentheses, parentheses, subtract. So this becomes negative, so this cancels out. This becomes negative, so now you have negative 4 minus 1, which is negative 5x squared, plus x plus 6. How many times does x go into negative 5x squared? It goes in negative 5x times. This times this is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times this is negative 5x. Parentheses, parentheses, subtract. Okay, so then this becomes positive. This becomes positive. These two cancel out. Now you have x minus, this is positive, right? Yeah, positive. So this is 6x plus 6. How many times does x go into 6x? It goes in 6 times. And then 6 times this is 6x plus 6. Parentheses, parentheses, subtract. And then now you get 0. Okay? But then how does that, now we have, you see how we got a remainder of 0. And why did we get a remainder of 0? Because this is a factor of that. But then how does this help us find the other two factors of p? Because you notice that this is one of the factors. But then this is also the other factor. So you know that, like for example, like if I say what's 20 divided by 5? It's 4. And notice, what is 5 times 4? 5 times 4 is 20. So that same idea holds here, that you know that this times this has to be this. So you know that x plus 1 times x squared minus 5x plus 6. That has to equal this. And then what are the other two? Like you see, this is one of the factors. What are the other two factors? You need to factor this guy. How do you factor this? Pause the video and try and factor it without my help. Okay? What two numbers when you multiply give you 6, but when you add give you negative 5? So this is x plus 1, right? And this is x minus 3, x minus 2 equals 0. And you see these are the other two factors of this polynomial. Wow. You see, that was not an easy question. Okay, so I give you guys a lot of props and credit for having the patience to do this. Okay, for the next part, we've done this before in class. What I want you to try and do is try and do this by yourself. I'll make another video to explain it, but try and do it by yourself. I'll see you.